Well, thank you, John, and thank you, everybody. It's Darren. It is Thursday. I do want to say thank you to John for holding it down yesterday. Thank you to Darnay Tripp, and thank you to everybody in the Section 1904 community. Do appreciate all the kind things that you all have said, whether it's on Discord or on social media. Even those of you who I got to know personally who have reached out, I do appreciate it. I try to get back to as many people as possible. Obviously, I think that will be impossible, but hopefully this message will serve as just a tremendous thank you, not only from me, but from my wife and from my family who listened to the podcast yesterday. My wife, unbeknownst to me, shared it with my aunt and my uncle, so it made the rounds. So, John, if you were running the diagnostics wondering why we were picking up listeners in other places that normally don't listen to Section 1904, there you go. It's been a emotional day or two, obviously. I think the good thing about my dad is he gave us so many reasons to smile and to laugh that we've really focused on some of those stories, like the silly story I told yesterday, which probably made no sense at all, about him and his brother Brian kicking this smoke grenade around a parking lot and getting arrested and catching a beating from the local police just because of who they were, because they were these hell-raising Smith brothers. I don't know that made any sense, but just kind of what my dad was all about. Even when he was doing something good, sometimes they're like, yep, we know who you are, Barry Smith, but still some things to take care of, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the podcast today. We'll let John do that. I know John's got things lined up, so again, my appreciation for John to pick up some of the slack there. And again, just do want to say thank you so much, not only to the people who are listeners, but so many colleagues have reached out. I just couldn't start rattling them off by name. People that I know who are in my social circle, people that I've worked with for a short period of time, people who I'm not particularly close with, but took the time to reach out, and that's greatly appreciated as well. So as I said, I've tried to thank everybody personally. I don't know that it'll be possible, but today's a day where we've got to take care of a few things. As anybody who's been through this, you could imagine some of the stuff that we have to take care of. So arrangements and the like, and I think it's a day where I'll probably just tune out a little bit and just try to reset. But also want to thank Adrian Garcia Marquez last night, who said something really nice on the SDFC broadcast. As I said yesterday when I contributed to the Section 1904 Wednesday episode, I don't know if it was right, wrong. It did, I think, help to go and just clear my mind for 2-3 hours. But when we started the broadcast, I don't know how many of you were listening, Adrian said, right as we were underway, right as the first whistle went, he said, we dedicate this broadcast to Barry Smith. And, man, I appreciated that. And he's a good man and a great partner, and made it a lot easier for me. And it was good. Because I think somewhere somebody said it right. One of the best ways to grieve is to watch 2 hours of some pretty crappy football. Right? Is that a phrase? Is that not a phrase? I don't know. Maybe it is. But let's be honest. That was pretty crappy. We can call it what it was. It was not one for the time capsule at Snapdragon Stadium. SDFC 0, Toronto Football Club 1. 20th minute penalty kick from Theo Corbeanu. And that was it, and a pretty flaccid-looking attack from SDFC. Now, I think before we talk about the subplot and Milan Iloski, I do think that there are some things that we can rightfully bring up. Not to make excuses, but just rightfully bring up. Short week, dealing with lots of injuries. Players have gone. Nobody's been added yet officially. There will be a player coming in here. I won't spend a ton of time talking about it, but Aiden Harangi. He's a defensive player. This isn't a replacement like for like with Milan Iloski, but poor Jasper Löffelsend. Nobody talked about his departure. All anybody wanted to talk about was Milan Iloski. But a couple of things that were I think are fair to bring up. It's a short week. I was at training on Tuesday. They didn't have enough players to practice 11 on 11, something I observed there. No Anibal Godoy, no Patty McNair. So you're without. Chucky Lozano had 30 minutes in him last night. And, those 30 minutes, maybe not the most efficient 30 minutes, but SDFC had 7 shots. 7. All of them in the second half. 5 of them from Chucky Lozano. Only one of them on target. So the attack just wasn't there at all. Now, do you want to credit Toronto for some of that? Sure. But midweek, without a bunch of players, other players who are available are in limited capacity, still on minutes restrictions. All of that being said, I think it's fair to bring it up. None of it, though, could be used as an excuse. And I'm glad refereeing is another thing. I'm sure I saw a little bit of that on the Discord channel when I got home last night and started scrolling through. Yeah, I don't understand why the handball didn't go to VAR. I don't. And if you heard me carry on for weeks about Jeppe Tverskov against Real Salt Lake, where he got whistled for a handball in the box a minute 5 and 13 passes after it actually happened, I don't understand why that one doesn't go to video review. It looked pretty clear to me that the ball hit Coelho's arm. The defender, or the midfielder, I guess, for Toronto Football Club. But all of these things, all of these variables, some questionable refereeing, injuries, minutes limits, players who are in transition going back to Europe. You think you have it bad. SDFC was at home. Toronto Football Club is a dreadful team that has already pulled the plug on its season, that had a couple of designated players in Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi, and essentially just said, we don't want you here anymore. Goodbye. Here's a buyout. Take a hike. Go kick rocks. So they came into the match. They had to fly from Toronto to San Diego, middle of the week. They have gotten rid of one of their most productive attacking players in Bernardeschi. They got rid of 2 DPs. They are as shorthanded as it gets. So, no excuses. You think SDFC had it bad, even with the circumstances being what they were of an expansion club and no academy and no real depth. Understand. But, Toronto probably had it worse. And they walked out with 3 points. So I know Mikey said it afterwards. Didn't really want to get into the referees. Said, I think they're trying. I think they're doing the best. But we weren't good enough. Even the goal that was allowed, it was a fair penalty. I don't know that anybody would disagree with that from Franco Negri. Does that happen if it's Luca Bombino? I don't know. We'll never know. But the penalty itself was even set up by some poor passing. Anders Dreyer was trying to pass the ball diagonally back to Negri, I think, and the ball just died in the middle of the field, and Negri was late getting to it, and it was a giveaway. And in the span of 3 seconds, Corbineau goes down, gets fouled inside of the box. Franco never really had time to get back there and get his feet set. So, sloppy passing, sloppy defending. Looked a little bit sloppy. Looked like a midweek match. But I think if you're going to rattle off a list of excuses, you would say that Toronto had more reasons to play poorly in this one than SDFC did. As for the Milan Iloski not being there, it reminded me of a story that Jed Hoyer told me. And I might get one of these details wrong, so forgive me if I do. You don't have to fact check this, but I remember Jed telling us a story when he was the general manager with the Padres, that one year with the Red Sox, they decided, I think I have this right, Derek Lowe, does that sound right? Derek Lowe was a pitcher for them. And I think he was a relief pitcher first and then became a starting pitcher. He had some milestone in baseball where he had been, such and such a person who had 20 wins. Like him and John Smoltz had some things in common. I don't remember exactly what they are, and that's not the point. So I won't spend time on that. But I remember he told us the story that they were going to convert Derek Lowe from a closer to a starting pitcher. And it was a bit controversial because Derek Lowe had been a pretty good relief pitcher. I think had led the league in saves, had been an all-star closer for the Red Sox. And this is early 2000s, so baseball is in a little bit of a different space. And this becomes a topic on ESPN. What are they doing? WEEI radio in Boston. What are they doing? Are they crazy? They have a closer. Why are they messing with him? But they really believe Derek Lowe could be a good starting pitcher. And he was. He went on to be a good starting pitcher for the Red Sox and then the Dodgers afterwards. But Jed always said that first game that Derek Lowe was removed as a closer and being given the starter, whoever the replacement closer was, blows the save opening day. And Theo Epstein turns to Hoyer right as the save is being blown, looks at Jed right in the face and goes, "Of course he did," to whomever it was that was closing, that blew the save. And I thought that last night. And I'm sure that Tyler Heaps thought that, sporting director. When you have a disagreement and you dissolve the loan agreement with Milan Iloski, and he's no longer available for the club after scoring 10 goals in 14 matches, of course you can't get a shot on target in the first half of the game. Of course not. Of course you can have one shot on target for the entire game. Of course you get skunked at home by a pretty bad Toronto football team. Of course. Of course that was going to happen. So I don't know that Tyler has that kind of humor the way Theo Epstein did and Jed Hoyer about their closing situation back in 2000, whatever. Of course he blew the save. We all knew it was coming. And you think about it, the way sports work sometimes, of course they got clean sheeted at home by Toronto Football Club. Now, Tomas Angel, Alex Mighton, not a shot between them. Increased spotlight on those guys. Much more important match coming up on Saturday against Vancouver. So maybe this is one of those trap games, sandwich games, whatever you want to call it. Wasn't good enough. I'm going to agree with what Mikey had to say. And hopefully we can see more minutes from Chucky Lozano, who wasn't super efficient, but was trying to make things happen. And, that's good enough for me. A couple of good performances, I thought, from Ian Pilcher, from Chris McVeigh in particular. But otherwise, pretty bad night all around. Good energy, though. Good energy in the building. Thought it was a pretty good crowd for a Wednesday from where I sat. And again, it was good to take my mind off things for a little bit. So on to the next one, on to Vancouver Saturday, which should be great for still top of the table for SDFC and some things I think they got to figure out. So hopefully some more bodies available. Hopefully Godoy. Hopefully Chucky can give you more than 30 minutes. Hopefully we can get a little bit of rest for Luca De La Torre, who looked a little bit tired at the end of that one. But they're gonna need a little bit more from some of their attacking players. One goal for Alex Mighton at this point of the season, 19 matches in, is not going to get it done when you're saying goodbye to Milan Iloski. And same thing goes for Tomas Angel. This is an opportunity for him literally to be playing the number 9 spot, wearing the number 9. You got to get a shot off at some point there. So on to the next one. We're on to Vancouver, and we're on to the rest of Section 1904. Thank you again so much for everything, for all the kind things that have been said. A lot of you have never met me. Almost none of you have met my dad, outside of a handful of friends who are subscribers to the podcast. So it has really been very, very helpful, more helpful than I could put into words. So thank you. I'm not sure what the rest of the week looks like for me. Perhaps we'll be back on Friday, but thanks to John again and Darnay yesterday, and on to the rest of the Section 1904 podcast.
Hey guys, there's not a ton going on. The Padres don't start playing baseball until tomorrow at the end of the All-Star break. There was a San Diego Football Club game last night, but Darren already kind of recapped that. You guys don't need my thoughts. If you want, I did write a game recap on section1904.com last night, but it mostly touched on all the same things Darren did, but in less detail and with less supporting quotes. So you don't need my thoughts on that. There was some stuff going on with San Diego State this morning as far as the predictions, preseason predictions for the football team, and Miles Bird admitting that he had type 1 diabetes as part of an NIL deal, which I actually think is a great story, but not one that needs to be dug into in this podcast. So Today I have a guest, just like yesterday when Darnay Tripp joined me. Today's guest is Hannah Kaiser. Hannah is, we work together at Yahoo Sports. She is a baseball journalist. She absolutely loves baseball in a way that I feel is so pure and wonderful. And since she got let go at Yahoo, she has started 2 different Substacks. One called The Bandwagon, that she does with Zach Kreiser, who also was on the podcast that I produced with the 2 of them at Yahoo Sports. He's a great kind of like analytically focused baseball writer, and Hannah is more on the like narratives, emotions, storylines, vibes side of things. And they do that Substack together. It's really great when they write a lot of posts together that'll like kind of start with Hannah's stuff and then go into Zach's stuff. And it's a really great balance if you're interested in like national baseball coverage. And then the other one, which I believe is called Some Hard Feelings, is her personal Substack that delves into parenthood as a first-time mother. She has a 1-year-old child. And also a little bit like what it's like being a parent while also, you know, trying to make it as a kind of independent baseball journalist. And all of this is very, very fascinating. Hannah is so interesting to talk to about anything and everything. So I chatted with her for a little bit this morning. I'll play it for you in a second. We delve into the All-Star Game, the swing off at the end, what a himbo is. We talked a little bit about the trade deadline. We didn't really get into the Padres side of things too much, but that's fine. And then we talked about just like how becoming a parent changes your brain, changes your perspective, and all the goodness that comes with that. So I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. I will be back tomorrow. As Darren said, he's not entirely sure. He's got some things to figure out on his end this week. I'm not sure if he'll be with me tomorrow or if it'll be someone else or if it'll be a solo podcast. We're kind of figuring it out as we go along, at least this week. So there will be some sort of podcast tomorrow. But until then, enjoy this interview with Hannah Kaiser.
Hey, I just went by the watch with a whole lot of diamonds to show how these niggas is my time. Took a trip out to Cali.
Hannah Kaiser, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. For anyone who's unfamiliar, Hannah is a MLB journalist. We'll get into some of that in a little bit. She also used to be one of the 2 hosts of the Bandwagon podcast that I produced at Yahoo Sports. I will probably have Zach on at some point as well, but it felt like if I had both of you on, I was not going to get a word in edgewise. But I'm interested in checking in with both of you. The Bandwagon was a short-lived but wonderful baseball podcast. And after it ended, or I guess when it ended, was when you and Zach got laid off by Yahoo Sports. Yes. And I got laid off like 2 months later. And I was like, man, sucks for me and Hannah and Zach. And then I read your thing that after, I think it was before you gave birth to your son, where you revealed that you were pregnant when you got laid off.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, that's very
Worse
different.
For me. Yes, yeah. Many people had that reaction. Many people were like, well, like both Zach and I went to a ballpark at the same time for something or other. And he was saying that someone had been talking to him and they were like, well, at least you weren't pregnant.
Exactly.
So yes, that being laid off, very bad. Being laid off while pregnant, worse.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I can't. Well, I can try. But you're here today. I want to talk some baseball with you, and then I want to get into talking some parenthood stuff with you because you are now a mother of a very adorable little man, and I'm interested in. You wrote. You have a Substack that gets into the parenthood side of things, and you kind of wrote about how much it has changed you and changed your brain. My wife loves to talk about how much her brain has changed since she had our daughter. And where those 2 things intertwine. But let's start with baseball, because I was thinking of you on, when was the All-Star Game? Tuesday night? I was thinking of you on Tuesday night when the home run swing off was happening at the end of the game. Because I was like, this is fun. And like you, as a baseball journalist, I don't know anyone else who leans into fun more than you. But also, there's a word that I'm familiar with, but no one has ever used it as much as you around me. So I have here in my notes, the himbo All-Star Swing-Off. Can you describe for the audience that may not know what himbo is or what it means when you use it?
Well, I probably, if I was using it a lot around you, it's because I feel like this rose to baseball relevance because of this sort of specific last couple year iteration of the Phillies team. The Philadelphia Phillies have a lot of, well, himbo etymologically is male bimbos, himbos.
Oh, that's where it comes from.
Yes. And the Phillies are like, as a collective, vibes wise, a bunch of beautiful dummies, or at least that's the impression that they're giving the public. Yeah, and Kyle Schwarber, the lone himbo representative of the Phillies,
right,
in this particular All-Star game, which I think they weren't expecting. We could get into that. I enjoyed Matt Gelb of The Athletic wrote a story about the Phillies being disappointed in their number of All-Star representatives, and it included a very good detail that they had in fact chartered a separate flight, assuming that they would be sending more people to All-Star than they ended up sending to All-Star.
Did it get canceled, or did Kyle just ride it by himself?
That's a great question. I hope somebody followed up and checked on that while he was in, because Zach Wheeler didn't even go. Zach Wheeler was their other All-Star selection, and he begged off. He was like, no, thank you.
We talked about this the other day on the podcast. There was someone that everyone, one of the pitchers, everyone thought should have been an All-Star selection, and so
two of the pitchers.
Well, so the Phillies gave a bonus to either one or both of them anyway, because they were just like, you should have been an All-Star.
Christopher Sanchez had a provision in his contract that said he would get an extra $50,000 if he was an All-Star, and reporting showed, and this was able to be confirmed, that MLB had actually specifically asked him to be an All-Star replacement, and he couldn't because of scheduling. It's interesting to me that we, as far as I know, have never gotten this particular spate of stories leading up to All-Star, which is pitchers who are considered All-Star snubs who are not available to be All-Star replacements because of when the game falls in relation to their pitching sort of normal schedule. And so Christopher Sanchez, I don't exactly know that this is what happened, but I think Christopher Sanchez had sort of a better excuse, not that it's an excuse, than Ranger Suarez, because he was literally pitching Sunday for the Phillies. And he was kind of like, I'm not going to not pitch in this competitive game to be available on Tuesday. And if he wasn't available, they weren't going to let him be a replacement, which I also kind of understand that logic from MLB's perspective. It's not that useful to have a replacement who literally can't play. If you get voted at into the All-Star game by the fans, but you can't play, that's one thing. But like, it's not, they can't sort of select you as a replacement if you then can't actually play. Anyway, the Phillies paid his bonus anyway, because what he was doing was prioritizing the competitive game that the Phillies do need, because the NL East is a competitive division. Okay, now we're like super far afield from All-Star.
They had to reward that. No, yeah, but no, going back to the himbo thing, like not only you I think the phrase that stuck in my head was, you were like, I have a hard time disliking Pete Alonso because he's just like the perfect himbo baseball player.
He's also a himbo. Yeah.
In my head, when I was trying to describe himbo to someone recently, I was like, you know how like this is very are you still doing the TikTok thing? Are you still on TikTok?
Sometimes.
Me too.
Looking at it, yeah.
And one of my favorite things is women showing off their, I think they call them like golden retriever boyfriends.
Yes.
And that's
exactly
a good name for a himbo, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like Pete Alonso is almost more golden retriever than himbo, because I think part of his vibe is such like earnest try-hardness.
It's coming from a good place.
It's coming from a really good place, and it's really sort of like outwardly generous. It's very like it's very extroverted. He's like it's like golden retriever energy is like himboism plus extroversion, and that's Pete Alonso.
I'm glad you explained all this, but this is the question I want to ask you about the swing off. And you're going to be my stand-in for kind of baseball right now. So yesterday I talked to a local sports anchor named Darren Tripp, and he said, he was watching the end of this. He was watching the swing off. I was watching the swing off, and he said he had a thought that after he said it, I was like, I had that thought too, which was as soon as it ended, he was like, damn, next year's All-Star game might not have this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had that same thought of like, wow, this made the All-Star Game fun, which means next year I'm going to be watching it going like, can we get a tie? Can we like, I'm rooting for a tie. I wonder who the guys would be. And like, do you think this is a good thing? It's a good thing because it's fun, but like, is that a bad thing that like fans are going into this rooting not for the game itself, but for like the extra inning of festivities?
Well, I think, and I was sort of surprised. I was texting with a friend on Monday, I guess, I assume, and they were like, wow, you're such a big home run derby fan. And I was like, am I? I thought everyone was such a big home run derby fan now. Like, my sort of impression is that in the last couple of years, the home run derby has overtaken the All-Star Game as kind of the premier event of All-Star Week, of the Midsummer Classic.
That was your take.
Yes, and I see. Here's the thing: I didn't even know that was a take. I thought that was just like an accurate read of the public, which is that I really do think that the home run derby, and I think you don't like the home run derby. I think that the home run derby as an event is just really good. I think I don't know other sports nearly as well, but my understanding is that like it's kind of hard to make these All-Star games super duper competitive because you guys, Zach Wheeler didn't even want to go. Like, it's hard to incentivize guys the right amount. It's hard to even kind of structure them so that they feel super competitively like the integrity of the competitiveness is there because you want everyone to get a chance. I mean, even this goes back to like people complain about every team getting an All-Star. It's kind of hard to maintain that super like competitive integrity in an All-Star setting. And I think home run derbies don't have that problem, even though not everyone does it. Like, obviously, we're not seeing Aaron Judge, for instance. Yeah. But like, I think within the context of who's competing, it's almost impossible to not try your hardest. Like, they're lobbing the pitches over the plate. They're throwing you meatballs. You're going to take your biggest swing. You're going to try to hit the home runs. And so like, to me, watching the home run derby, I care actually more about the outcome of the home run derby than I do about the outcome of the All-Star game. Because to me, the outcome of the All-Star game, it's like, I don't know, it's a slightly random matchup of guys. Which batters match up with which pitchers feels sort of random, as opposed to like the home run derby feels like, okay, let's find out which of these guys can actually hit the most home runs. Like it feels like very meaningfully competitive to me. And I thought that the swing off, which is interesting to me that people felt like, oh, this is like so gimmicky. Because I was like, I don't know. To me, this feels like true competitiveness. Like, watching the guys were nervous.
Yeah.
The teams were outside the dugout rooting them on. Like, it felt like genuine. Like, I was biting my nails. I was like, this feels like a real competition. Like, who's going to win this competition? I think the home run derby is like a more immediate sense of competitiveness. And it just really, really, like, it feels like you are watching it like true, like these guys want to win and they're doing everything they can in a way that doesn't necessarily extend to the All-Star game writ large.
I agree with some of what you're saying. And I think part of, I don't think I talked about this on the podcast, but, part of what really robs the All-Star game of like any feeling of competitive nature is like Manny Machado and Dave Roberts have spent like a year basically barking at each other. And now Dave's his manager and Manny's just like, hey bud, how's it going? And it's like, how are you like, and you spend all this time being like, I play for the name on the jersey. Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, you don't anymore. You're my issue with the home run derby is that, you're being competitive as a individual, not as a team. I think that's a different mindset and maybe uncomfortable for some people. B, I think the home run derby has gotten way too overly complicated.
That's true.
There's a certain number of outs, but there's also a clock. But if you hit a ball far enough, you get an additional out. But I don't think you get additional clock. And there's different colored balls, and they mean different things, and they're worth. And the balls are, I think, clearly juiced.
Oh yeah, they're hella juiced.
That's why I like, part of the reason I loved the swing off was I was like, you get 3 swings. Yes. Everyone's got the same guy throwing them BP pitches, and the pace of it was fast. The balls, I don't think, were juiced, and it wasn't complicated. It was easy to understand.
The 3 swing aspect, and when they said that, I was like, how many home runs are we going to get then? Like, I was sort of like, I was fully impressed with everyone who participated in the swing off. Like, I was kind of like, I think we're going to get some 0 home runs. Like, not, I don't mean that, right. You don't get 3.
Did we? I think we did, right?
We got 1. I think only, was it Jonathan Aranda? I think was the only one
I
who
think
didn't
he
hit
got
any home
0,
runs.
yeah.
But like, I was impressed. Kyle Schwarber going 3 for 3. It's like truly one of the most impressive things I've ever seen on a baseball field. I feel like I was like, that's incredible. That's not 3 for 3 making contact. That's not 3 for 3 getting a hit. That's 3 for 3 out of the park. Like that is good eye. That is good contact.
One of them he did from his knees. That was insane.
Yeah, I the limited number of swings angle of the swing off was particularly nerve-wracking. Like it really, because it more so than the Derby itself put a lot of stakes in like which pitches they swing at. Like it sort of tested a different skill in addition to just kind of like strength and contact. It also tested your like pitch recognition in a way.
Yeah, and I think right before Schwarber hit that last one, the one from his knees, the pitch right before it was like a perfect pitch, and you could see like it came down the middle. It was right where he wanted it, and he let it go by, and then you could see he was like mad at himself, like shit, should have swung at that one. It was perfect, and then he got like the exact same pitch in the exact same place, luckily, and knocked it out and created a great moment. And nothing says himbo more than you're the All-Star MVP and you got 0 hits. And you're not good at fielding and you're not fast and you're not a pitcher. Like, he added nothing to that game outside of the swing off, but he won them the game. And it's like, yeah, just show up at the last minute, hit some dingers, and boom, you're the best guy ever. It was lovely. It was a great end to that game.
It was just great. And Mets fans were mad because they were robbed of Pete Alonso in the Derby, then they were robbed of Pete Alonso in the swing off, and then they were robbed of Pete Alonso as the MVP because of Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch off the All-Star Game. As a journalist, I not that I'm a journalist, but I've played around in these waters long enough. There's always something that a journalist covering a sport is like, I hate this. I know everyone else loves this, but I hate this. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the trade deadline? Do you hate it or do you love it?
Yeah, I hate it. That's fair.
Do you really?
I don't enjoy doing. I don't mind the existence of the trade deadline. Right. I don't love the kind of like. I don't like doing content that is far out from the trade deadline, even 2 weeks. That's kind of like, what trades should they do? Or even like, do you think they should do this trade? Because I'm always like, sure, if it's
if
available
they want
to them,
to,
like if it's available, like it just feels like I'm interested in trade deadline stories that are like after the fact, or even kind of like trends, or like, but the kind of, I find it very hard. I don't like when journalists are asked to be front office people. This is part of the beef I have with like sports media across the board.
Yeah.
I think increasingly the expectation is that people who cover a sport are supposed to be able to do the job of front offices better than the front offices. And I'm like, that's not my job. That's like, I'm not better at analyzing. It's like when people will be like, people will be like, who won this trade? I'm like, nobody. It's an equal trade. That's why they did the trade. Like, if as an outsider, you knew, if like the people who are in the front offices are smart. They're good at their jobs. They're doing, like, I don't like when 10 years down the line, people will be like, this is a trade that this side won or this side lost. And I'm like, right, but in the moment, it made sense to do it. That's why they did it. Like, it's. So I don't like the trade deadline from a preview perspective. From a review perspective, if there's interesting stories, like, whatever, like a fun, listen, the Rafael Devers trade, like, react to that. Tell me what happened. He had to walk off the plane past all his teammates, whatever. Like, that's interesting to me. But the kind of like, pretend you're a front office without all of the information that the front office actually has just feels like, why don't we just see what happens?
Yeah, I honestly, like, there's a part of me that thinks that a lot of the toxic parts of sports talk, and one of them is like this, like, you got to predict what's going to happen thing, comes from like people wanting to win the water cooler conversation at work. Like, they want to say like, this is what I think's going to happen, and they're just mimicking someone else. And then when it happens, they're like, see, I was right. Therefore, I can predict what this front office is going to do. And it's like, no, you heard someone who happened to probably guess right. And I don't know. Even now, like, I feel obligated to be like, if I was the Padres GM, here's what I would do. And it's you're right that there's so much information there that I just
There's so
don't
much
have.
information. And you, even if you get it right, again, it's like, it's kind of like, if you get it right, that's not to say that you're not smart or not doing anything correctly, but it's still just sort of like, you could guess a trade or even analyze a hypothetical trade that the front office would love to do, but then there's 28 other teams. So like it's the level of rigor that would have to go into predicting just doesn't, like, quite literally, like, doesn't feel worth it when it's like it either will or will not happen. So the kind of like the on the water cooler aspect of it is interesting. One of the most influential things that I ever heard a sports talk person say, this was like years ago, like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago. I think it was Effectively Wild podcast, but they weren't even talking about baseball, but they were saying something about how like football was a little bit behind baseball at the time in terms of analytics. And maybe it's just Slate, hang up and listen, but somebody said something where they were like, football fans enjoy that sometimes you are smarter than the football coach still.
Yes.
Because once analytics comes for your sport, you will never be smarter than the front office if you had all the information that they are working with. And like, that is in some ways the problem. It's like they're analyzing it on levels that we are just not and cannot because of like proprietary information or health records or like whatever. And that's not to say that they are perfect and we are stupid or whatever, but it's true that it's like, it's fun to second guess. I get the impulse. I get wanting to armchair quarterback, whatever, like the decision that the manager made, but like probably the reason you disagree with them is just because you like don't know that somebody was like nursing a sore hammy that day or whatever. Like I hunger for sports journalism that is not just trying to outthink the front office, because I want to allow front offices to do their jobs. They're good at them.
Yeah. So when I was at NFL Network, I did a podcast with this woman named Cynthia Freeland, who I think is still at NFL Network. And her whole thing was like, she was essentially a mathematician. And she had all these algorithms that would basically predict what was going to happen. Not just, and like at first I was like, is this just based on math? Is this just like, are you looking at the numbers and predicting like this is what the numbers spit out? And one day she was like, I want to show you something. She like pulled me in like a dark room, like locked it. And she opened her computer and she's like, check this out. And she had a system. This was before like AI really took off. This was 2017, 2018. And she had a system that would look at the game film from the football game, and the AI would analyze where every player was and the amount of separation players could get. And it would spit out like, okay, if it's this player against this player, the success rate is this, as long as the quarterback is throwing and this pass. And like, it would figure all this out and spit out predictions for her. And I remember being like, this is the future. It's not going to be some doofus going, what I think is going to happen. It's going to be, I have a very smart computer program that I've built that predicts this. And the funny thing was, we built this whole podcast around it, right? It was called Game Theory and Money. And it was supposed to be like kind of for betting, right? Like, hey, if you're going to be betting on this stuff, like here's hard numbers, here's strong predictions. And every episode we put out, people would be like, you don't know anything about football, Cynthia. Like, what's actually going to happen when the Jets play the Dolphins is this. And the fact that you predicted this shows that you've never put a hand in the dirt. And I'm like, guys, it's not her. Like, this is not her take.
Right.
She's just relaying what the computer program that she built is doing. And I always thought that's where we were going. And it's just, maybe we still are. Maybe it's just slower than I thought. But no one could seem to ever really understand that even though it was her face and her mouth, that the things she was saying were based on statistics and math. And none of it was based on like emotion or like opinion.
Right. And that's sort of my point about like the trade deadline. I'm kind of like, I would rather write the stories that are based on emotion and opinion. And so we could try to do the like, who's, is this prospect and this reliever, are they equal value? But that's just whatever. They either are or they are.
All right. I want to move on to the Some Hard Feelings Substack that you do that has a lot more to do with being a mother. I'm going to say first time mother. I know that there's pressure that comes with that phrasing, but I'm going to say first time mother. And everything else that goes into that. And you wrote a post the other day that I really, really loved called 1 Year Wisdom. That was like everything that you've basically learned that has sunk in as valuable information over the past year. And it's great. And like,
thank you.
I read it and relived a lot of like where I was when my daughter turned 1. And then it made me smile because I'm like, there's so much information now that she's 7.5 that I looked at your post. I was like, oh, there's so much more that Hannah's not aware of that's coming. And that's really cool for me to see and get excited for you and all that. But just to keep it with baseball for a second, are you writing for anyone besides your Substacks right now?
Yeah. I mean, I freelance. I have a piece coming out soon in the New York Times. I do some stuff for The Ringer. I do stuff for Front Office Sports. I've done some stuff for The Guardian. Yeah.
I have seen you in The Ringer. That's right. So my question is, are you still doing the like go into Clubhouse and talk to players and coaches thing?
I am. Yes.
Okay. So now that you are a mother and your brain has changed.
Yes.
A thing that happened to me, and I think to my wife as well, like she described it like this, like I ride my bike around town. And she was like, yeah, I used to drive around and there'd be people on bikes and I'd be like, this fucking guy, get out of my way. And she's like, but now I know you as a bike rider. I see someone on a bike and I'm like, oh, that's someone's husband or that's someone's dad or that's someone's son. And it makes me respect them and their life and their safety in a way that I never did. And she said, when she became a parent, same thing for me. You start looking at people through the lens of like, this is someone's son, this is someone's daughter, or this is someone's father. And how has that changed how you have not navigated a clubhouse, but just feel about these people when you walk in and you talk to them?
Oh, that's such a great question. That's actually that's beautiful. No one's ever asked me that, and I talk to these guys constantly now about their kids, like players, coaches. I know who. Like it's amazing to me how many baseball players' children's names I know.
Really?
Yeah, because guys love to talk about their kids, and it's really made me so attuned to the news of that. Like now, I'll be shocked if I'll be like, oh my God, he just had a second kid. I had no idea his wife was pregnant. Like, oh, that's crazy. Like it puts everything into perspective for me. Truly, it actually that's such a great point. It is. Definitely baseball players are so like I see so much now the like stage of life that players or teams are in. Actually, some not to like make everything about the Phillies. Someone did a story earlier this year about how the Phillies have an incredible I think they might have the most kids. They have the most like dads on their team or kids total. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, like there's like something written about like how all their kids are roughly the same age and they hang out. And that angle, I care a lot more now. I love asking guys who have been on a lot of teams how different teams have treated their families and kind of like which teams were the best for your families and that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely, it's amazing. It's almost like guys are so interested in talking about their kids. This was one of the things that I put in that piece was that like one of the things I learned in the first year of parenthood was that like you should ask people about their kids. It feels like such a like small talky question, but it's actually not. If you ask people about their kids, they love to talk about their kids. Even non-athletes like the front office people or PR people. PR people, I'll ask them about their kids and I'll be like, how's it been on the road? Like it's such a universal experience but then being an athlete is such a specific experience. Guys talk about how hard it is. I'll always ask guys like, are your kids on the trip with you? Did the family come? That kind of thing. And I love hearing that. I love getting a sense of kind of how being a professional athlete fits into their family lives and how being a parent fits into their professional athlete lives. I was talking to like recently a sort of like extreme journeyman kind of guy, already played for 3 different teams this year or whatever. And he was saying that he was like, I just want the team to be like straight with me up front about whether or not this is like a short-term thing because the guy's on the IL or whether or not there's a longer-term thing because I need to know like, should my family try to find a place around here for a little bit? And like, it's interesting to think about the decisions that are going into like roster moves that involve families and that kind of thing. Yeah, I
The
love
other
talking
the
to
other
guys
side
about
of
it.
that is like I think the reason that parents are always so excited to hear that question of like, talk about your kids, something like
Yeah,
that, is because we're all learning from each other all the time. And like sometimes you ask that question, someone's like, "Oh, my kid, like we travel around, but like I have a great setup on planes that works." And you're like, "Oh, tell me. I need a
yeah,
great
yeah.
plane setup, right?" And so it's a question that when it's asked, usually the person who's being asked it has also asked that question of other people, so they feel themselves in the question. But B, they feel this shared sense of like we're all helping each other to be better parents. So there's a lot of humanity in it. And I love asking people about their kids all the time. I'm actually most curious. I know you mostly stick with baseball, but there's a coach in basketball who I've been fascinated with for years. Her name is Jenny Busek. She's an assistant coach for the Indiana Pacers. She used to be an assistant coach for the Dallas Mavericks. And every NBA player who has ever played for her is like, she's a genius. And she's like the best coach I've ever had. She's a single mother. Like, and not like she had a kid with someone and they got divorced. Like she went so hard at the coaching thing. Cause you know how some like coaches just don't really have time for personal life.
Yeah.
She went so hard at the coaching thing. And then at one point she was like, well, I want to be a mom too. So she got like artificially inseminated and had a kid while being an NBA assistant coach. And like, I'm so curious about what that childcare situation is, right?
I wrote a story for The Guardian earlier this year about a woman who works for the Cleveland Guardians, Jennifer Wolfe, who became a single mom by choice this offseason. And I was writing about the fact that one of the reasons she felt comfortable doing this was because there was another woman who had worked in the Cleveland Guardians front office for like 20 years who had become a single mom by choice like 20 years ago, or maybe she'd worked there for longer, maybe she'd worked there like 40 years.
Yeah.
And kind of the importance of seeing someone go through it first, and the older woman whose daughter is now like a teenager, and the younger woman knows her daughter, and it's very beautiful. But like she works in more of like an admin sort of role, and then the younger woman is like more of a kind of part admin, part baseball ops type stuff, and kind of seeing how, and neither of them are coaches, and they both said sort of doing this as a coach would be even harder, but right, kind of seeing the ways that I wanted to write that story to write about this idea that like as we see more women in different spheres of sports, that unless we figure out ways for that to be compatible with motherhood, it's not really compatible with women, because like it's kind of like a lot of the women in these roles are a relatively new phenomenon, and the more there are over time, the inevitability it is that you'll run into maternity leave, breastfeeding, pumping, pregnancy, all of that, and kind of the whatever level of progress we feel like we've made across sports, allowing women into these spaces, like that is limited unless we figure out soon how to have women become mothers while holding those jobs, because like otherwise it's just like you're just going to cycle women in and cycle them back out. Like it's really important to me. It's become increasingly important to me, obviously, to think about like, are these spaces compatible to women as long as they don't require any maternal accommodation, or are they actually accommodating of women?
That's a really good point. And I'm excited where all of this is going, because you know I've been telling people this for years since I became a father, and even before that, people will tell you like we're waiting for the right time to have a kid, and I'm like, there's never a right time.
Yeah,
it's like you're not going to be like settled with your money set and like bored. Like no one has a kid out of boredom. It just happens, right? You have a kid, and then you have to build them into your life, and like. You are a journalist. Your husband's still a journalist, right? Baseball journalist?
Yeah, he's sports. He's the sports editor at the Associated Press.
Damn, that's a title.
Yes,
I was even more impressed than I was before. So like you guys are working parents, and I imagine you are not intending to leave your apartment in Brooklyn. So like
no,
you're in a big city, like in a busy part of a big city, and it's like you could sit there and be like, well, it's not the right time because we don't have the right space, or we don't have the right time, or we don't have enough money, or whatever. But like sometimes if you just do it, you like find some magic in that, and then you become an example for someone else who's like, well, if they could do it, I could do it too. Exactly what you're talking about. So I love that. All right, I've taken up 32 and a half minutes of your time, but I'm going to take up a couple more. Tell me your favorite things about your kid.
Oh, he's so happy. He's so happy. We got insanely lucky with how giggly and smiley, and everybody comments on it.
Sounds like a good sleeper.
He's not as good a sleeper as you would think based on that.
Yeah.
This is the thing. He'll have a really rough night, and then by morning he's giggly, happy, so much fun again.
Fantastic.
So that's probably the number one, is that like he just rewards the idea of play. Like it's so much fun to do things with him because he's not fearful of anything, and a lot of things delight him. And I hope that that's like a genuine personality trait to him. Because like, even like, you mentioned living in Brooklyn, like my sister and her kids who are older, not that much older, they're like toddlers, will come to visit, and this is no shade on them, but like they seem sort of so much more like overwhelmed by the city, understandably. They didn't grow up here. And my son, who is like just very like, he can go to a restaurant and he can go to the park and the playground and the library and bop around, and the sirens don't bother him. The construction doesn't bother him. He's just like a very,
he's a New Yorker.
He's a New Yorker. He's like a little 1-year-old New Yorker.
I love it. What is your favorite lesson that you've learned in the first year? And what's the question that pops in your head most often that you haven't answered yet?
Oh, my favorite lesson is probably the thing that you said, that it's like you realize how everyone, the way I phrased it in the piece that I wrote, was that like people who have families, and everyone has a family in some way, you realize that like everyone is kind of going home to something more important than like whatever you're doing with them. And I think that's great. Like I think that's not like a parenting lesson, it's like a person lesson. But you realize that like people are, it makes you think about like how people become people, and then you're like, oh my God, everyone did that? That's crazy. Even like I was talking to my husband last night about the fact that he has become so much more, my husband has become sort of so much more introspective since becoming a parent. And he said, like, I don't feel like I'm more introspective. I just feel like there's sort of more to be introspective about. And I was like,
fair.
Well, same kind of thing. Yeah, that's right. Like you suddenly realize like how like little everything is the tip of an iceberg, kind of. You're like, you and your spouse could talk for hours, I'm sure, about like, did you see they did something a little different? And it's like fun to apply that to everyone in your world. What's a question that I still have? I wonder what is his personality and what is just being a baby or this stage. This is like kind of a like only having one kid thing, where I'm kind of like, my sister has two, and I feel like having two has allowed her to see their personalities more clearly, because she can sort of see them in contrast to each other. And to me, my baby is like baby. Like I'm just like, that's how baby is.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like parents who have more experience, I'm like, how soon do you start to see what is truly their personality and not just like the particular stage or milestone that they're going through?
I'll say this, and so the older they get, the more they're a mirror, right? And I don't mean like just in terms of like she'll repeat stuff back to me that I say. I never realized how disengaged I could be around people, because I'd be like checking my phone or whatever while in the middle of a conversation, until it became her going like, why are you checking your phone in the middle of us playing Chutes and Ladders? Yeah. And I was like, that's right, I shouldn't be doing that. It should be okay for me to just have one-on-one engagement with no other like screens or whatever. But a thing I wouldn't have recognized if it didn't make me feel like I was, abdicating my responsibilities as a father, or just not being as good a father as I could be quite easily just by putting the phone down. So they're good for that. But another thing it makes you realize is that like there's kind of no such thing as like, this is someone's personality. We are always changing, always. My daughter is different now than she was when she was 5. When she was 3, I was like, I know what her personality is. She's the bubbly, happy. She likes to make people laugh. She likes to put on a show. She doesn't really like to be scared. That's not a fun thing for her. She needs her blankie for comfort, whatever. Like, you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is their personality, and they're just going to get bigger. And then you realize, like, as they switch from daycare to preschool to elementary school, and they start building relationships with people, and sometimes those relationships break, right? Like, we've already had situations where, like, she joined a friend group, and then the friend group kind of grew away from her, so she was, like, brokenhearted, and then she formed a new friend group that's, like, a lot more inclusive and like, understanding each other's emotions, as opposed to, like, just focusing on whether or not you're, like, pretty or fashionable. Yeah. And it's like, all these little things don't just happen around her. They're happening to her, right?
Yeah.
And once that happens, it actually triggers a really scary parenting thing, which is like, I love my kid. I love my kid so much, and I'm so proud of my kid, and she's great. But that could go to hell. Like, that just because she's great now doesn't mean she's going to be great forever.
Right.
That could go to hell. And that's when you realize, like, oh, the parenting thing never stops. Like, it goes on forever because you're constantly guiding them in the right direction, not too much, not with too strong of a hand, but you're always going to be helping and guiding them towards trying to be the best person they can be. And trying to navigate the, like, okay, I don't want to push too hard because I want her to be her own person and all that stuff. But yeah, the personality thing is cool because I know my daughter's personality, but the second I think this is who she is, she changes, even in subtle little ways.
That's so interesting because you're right. Because I distinctly remember when I was pregnant having the thought that I didn't feel like my personality was necessarily the same as it was when I was a kid. And yet that as soon as I got a baby, I was so right. You're so eager to know them. Yeah. You're so eager to like fill in the kind of knowledge to match the level of love you have, that you do you're like, this is who they are. This is.
We're also
you want them to be more settled than they are, just so you can know them in this, like, concrete way.
Also, like, you and me and my wife, and I imagine Jake, like, how do you get to know people? Lots and lots of talking. And so, like, I imagine your 1-year-old, who you described as being very baby, is he walking yet?
He is. He
Look
is
at
walking.
You, early bloomer.
Yes.
My daughter didn't start walking till like 13 months, and it was like the only thing she didn't do early, and we were like, oh God, and then she's totally fine. But I remember saying for years, like, I just can't wait until I can just talk with her all the time, because that's when I'm going to get to know her. And now she never shuts up, which is fine because neither do I. But like, when it's me, her, and my wife, like, oftentimes someone feels left out of the conversation because two people are just talking constantly. But like, that's how you really get to know them. And I remember being like, I can't wait until I get to talk to her. And then she started talking, and like, we could have conversations. And I was like, I can't wait to figure out who she's going to be when she's, in high school or in her 20s or 30s or 40s. I can't wait to find out, who she's going to spend her life with, if it's anyone, if she's going to have kids, like all. And my wife always has to be like, slow down, like, appreciate her for now. It's okay that you're excited for that, but just appreciate who she is now. And that's good advice. To just appreciate who he is now, even though you don't know a lot about him. He doesn't know a lot about himself, and he doesn't know a ton about you, but like, appreciate this. Because in 5 years from now, you're going to start to forget it a little bit. And you're going to be like, oh man, remember that? That was, what a different time. That was weird. That was wild. Also, and I'll leave you with this. My wife and I have one of those like digital picture frame things.
Oh, we do too.
And it's like on our kitchen counter, and we have it tied to like a Google Photos album that will like literally identify our faces. And if our faces are in a picture on our phone, it'll automatically add it to the thing.
Wow.
It's easier to set up than you think. And so we just, and it just changes pictures every few minutes. And so we constantly see pictures of her as a baby, or trips we took when she was at a baby, or, first time at a restaurant, first time on a boat, first time in a car, like all this stuff. And it's just like, those are really cool reminders, because your brain goes right back to it as soon as you see the picture. So as much as you could do that, like look at old pictures and just be reminded of them, do it.
Yeah. I feel like already I look at pictures from when he was little and I think like, wow, we had no idea. I sometimes think that I'm like, I don't even know that I recognize his like infant photos. I'm like, he looks, and that gets back to the like they're always changing. Where I'm like, the way
Always.
he looks right now looks to me like I'm like, that's my baby. But then I look at pictures of him when he was an infant. I'm like, oh, it looks pretty different. Looks pretty different already. He really changed a lot in 1 year, so he could change a lot in the next year too.
For sure. I'll have you back on next year. We'll talk about what year 2 was like. But thank you so much for joining me and talking baseball and parenthood and all of that. I feel like this was a really fun conversation.
It was great.
So I never really knew you. God, I really tried to. Blindsided, addicted. Thought we could really do this, but really I was foolish. Hindsight, it's obvious. Talking with my lawyer, she said, where'd you find this guy? I said, young people fall in love with the wrong people sometimes. Some mistakes get made, that's alright.